The last difference between people who are able to completely eliminate the impact of trauma in their lives and those who aren't, that I want to share with you today is this. You must correct the developmental gaps left behind as a result of your trauma. Let me show you what I'm talking about. In nurturing parent-child relationships, the parent does something called mirroring from infancy and throughout childhood. It's providing an accurate and loving reflection back to the child of the child's needs and emotions. What this does for the child is several things. It fosters a sense of security and solid identity. It teaches the child about feelings, both what they are and that it's okay to feel. It teaches the child how to regulate emotions. It teaches the child that he or she is valuable, and so much more. Abusive or neglectful caregivers just don't provide mirroring, because abuse is the opposite of mirroring. An abusive or neglectful person has to be closed off to the needs and attentions, emotions of a child. If you didn't receive this very important support as an infant or a small child, you're likely to experience difficulties like these. Trouble fitting in with your peers, difficulty soothing yourself, having a hard time trusting yourself, having difficulty trusting other people, having trouble making decisions, finding it hard to avoid being exploited. Unfortunately, the fields of mental health and psychotherapy have barely caught up with what you need for healing your triggers. It isn't surprising then that there's little attention towards supporting your development by showing you what the typical gaps in development are for adults who were hurt as children. You need to know what normal development looks like for people who haven't had trauma and how to take steps toward filling those developmental gaps for yourself. See, there's a logical progression for a child's development. And that logical progression can't be skipped over or suddenly just picked up. A baby first is completely focused on sensations in their body and on learning how to get basic needs met. First with the demands, and then later the child learns socially appropriate ways to get those needs met. The next step in development supports the child toward focusing outwardly to social relationships. If you missed any of those steps, your growth has to take the normal steps of progression. There's no getting around it. Just like learning any new skill, the progression has to be followed. You most likely didn't learn how to run without first learning how to walk, and learning to stand before that, and to sit before that. So first you have to learn how to soothe yourself by healing your triggers. Then you need to learn how to comfort yourself in the ways a small child who did obtain all of the necessary nurturing got. Then, once you begin to feel solid in yourself, you'll naturally begin to think about developing safe social relationships. And you need more than the intuition of a therapist or hoping to stumble on what you need next in your personal development. You need a consistent guidepost telling you what normal development looks like and how to take small steps on a consistent basis to get you there. You need to know that you're okay and that it's okay to make mistakes and that all of us are learning. You need someone to show you the path and to cheer you along the way. Because things like self-acceptance or self-care or peace of mind or social skills or the ability to deal positively with conflict don't just magically appear or come after a great therapeutic insight. Developing these skills takes having the right information, practice, guidance, patience, and persistence. But you can do it. Because here's the most amazing bonus. Very often, developmental gaps, once you see them, are reinforced by triggers. Once you understand the gap and what you should be doing on a developmental level, The space between your new healthy behavior and where you are now is most likely being held open by triggers.
Let me give you an example so you can really understand how triggers maintain the gap between where you are developmentally and where you want to be. I've mentioned several developmental gaps over these videos. I mentioned the inability to self-soothe. This is a piece of development that should be attained in infancy. But being triggered in a way that makes sleep difficult blocks that ability. The gap between not being able to rest and resting peacefully for trauma survivors involves healing the trigger of not feeling safe at night. Erase that trigger and your development can progress as it normally would, so you can soothe yourself at night to get to sleep. I also mentioned the inability to set emotional boundaries. Toddlers should learn this when they're around 2 years old, saying things like no and mine and I do it. If you weren't allowed to do this as a toddler, then the developmental gaps you experience is the ability to set boundaries for yourself now. Heal the trigger responsible for your fear of setting boundaries, and that gap is closed. The same thing is true for every area of development that you missed because of your trauma. If you have difficulty with self-acceptance, there are triggers keeping you from developing it. Heal the triggers and you can develop self-acceptance as you normally would have had the trauma not arrested your development. If you have difficulty with a clear sense of identity because you weren't allowed to develop based on the trauma dynamics that you experienced, what you need to do is find the triggers that kept you from developing your sense of self and heal them. Then you'll be free to develop your identity without limits. The problem with the developmental gaps that are left open based on childhood trauma is that this is another case of not knowing what you don't know. What you need is a way to assess for various areas of development so you can identify whether you've been able to obtain that specific developmental task or if triggers maintain a gap for you. The Skill Builder monthly newsletter outlines what normal development should look like and points you to where potential triggers may be for you so you can heal the triggers that maintain those gaps. It gives you the education and exercises to do every month to keep you informed about where your growth should continue as you continue to watch for and heal your triggers, so you can close those developmental gaps and be where you would have been if that trauma hadn't happened for you.
And you can take everything you've already learned and your skills for self-healing and just keep repeating the process over and over until you are where you want to be in your life. You'll be accepting and compassionate toward yourself. You'll have a clear sense of who you are. You'll know how to protect yourself from people who would treat you poorly. You'll be able to ask for help, draw comfort from relationships, and give back in healthy, satisfying ways. You'll be able to relax. You'll be able to motivate yourself toward your goals and dreams. And most of all, you'll know that you can overcome anything that comes across your path because you've overcome and conquered so much. You'll feel free and safe and happy like you've never imagined before. So we've made it through all 6 videos about why some people are able to completely heal their trauma and why other people can't. I'm so excited that you've gotten this far, and I want to say congratulations to you. Please join me tomorrow when I tell you everything that you're going to get inside the Trauma Erase Method Academy when you join me. We'll see you tomorrow.